I had an accident unexpectedly when I was 3 months pregnant. I had an accident unexpectedly when I was 3 months pregnant. Lying in the emergency room, I was sweating with pain, my face pale and green, and I kept calling Fu Zhizhou. But it won't ring through. And after my miscarriage, I accidentally stumbled upon Fu Zhizhou's White Moonlight's WeChat Moments. My boyfriend cancelled all his work to watch the sunrise with me, and he really loves me. When I was hanging by a thread, he was accompanying his white moonlight to watch the sunrise. I bitterly smiled and dialed my mentor's phone number. Professor Zhou, after considering it, I have decided to study abroad and I will be leaving soon. On the 3rd day after my miscarriage, Fu Zhizhou finally came back. He had a slight look of guilt on his face, but there was more of a sense of satisfaction from his secret pleasure. I didn't storm up to him and demand why he had disappeared for 3 days without answering his phone. I just looked at him casually. Hardy, I've taken on a closed project for a company and cannot disclose any information to anyone due to a confidentiality agreement, so I haven't been able to reply to your messages for the past 3 days. Don't be angry, I won't do it again, okay? I smiled faintly. It's a ridiculously poor excuse. What project could be so urgent that he couldn't even find time to call me back? Even though my heart was cold, I simply replied calmly, okay. Fu Zhizhou was taken aback by my reaction, somewhat surprised. If it were in the past, I would have gone crazy and rushed up to scream and accuse him. XINU, are you still angry with me? Don't be angry anymore. I bought these flowers specially for you. Fu Zhizhou pulled out a bunch of roses from behind him, which were not very fresh and looked like they were picked up casually on the side of the road. Looking at his flattering demeanor, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. After 10 years of marriage, you don't know I have a pollen allergy? What? Fu Zhizhou paused for a moment and slightly widened his eyes. He seemed to have a guilty look, but then he suddenly showed a cold and rational expression. I'm sorry, Sinew, I've been working day and night for the past few days, and I'm just too tired to remember that you have a pollen allergy. This scarf was specially bought for you. Do you like it? I looked at the pale pink silk scarf in Fu Zhizhou's hand, which had a brand logo on it and was indeed quite expensive. But I gradually started to tear up. Because this scarf was what Zhang Ruowei didn't want. I just saw it on her WeChat Moments that she posted a whole box full of gifts. Caption, my boyfriend always loves to give me random gifts, but this scarf is just too ugly. I'd rather tie it on my dog. So Fu Zhizhou gave me the silk scarf that Zhang Ruowei had discarded like trash, which was only fit for a dog to wear. Just like all the things he gave me over the past 10 years, they were all leftovers that Zhang Ruowei didn't want. It's funny how I used to treasure this junk, but it was only when I saw Zhang Ruowei's endless stream of WeChat moments that I finally woke up from my fantasy. What's wrong, XINU? Don't you like it? I folded up the scarf and pulled a faint smile. I like it. Fu Zhizhou thought that I was no longer pursuing the matter, and he let out a sigh of relief. Hey, XINU, you've been calling me non-stop for the past 3 days. Is there anything urgent? No. I suppressed the chill at the bottom of my eyes. It's just that I had a car accident and my life was hanging by a thread, and my child didn't survive. How could there be anything more important to Fu Zhizhou than accompanying Zhang Ruowei to watch the sunrise? Fu Zhizhou was still trying to say something when suddenly his phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and immediately said, Sinew, I need to take care of some work-related matters first. After saying that, he hurried back to his study. He didn't even notice my pale and abnormal face color, let alone show any concern for my health. Staring at the closed study door, I no longer hesitated and tiredly dialed my mentor's phone number. Professor Zhou, I've thought it over and I've decided to study art abroad for further education. Professor Zhou was surprised by my sudden change of words. Because he has asked me to study abroad many times in the past few years, but I always refused him for Fu Zhizhou. Heart Joy, are you really sure about this? This trip will take at least 3 or 5 years. I'm sure. Once, I thought my marriage with Fu Zhizhou was perfect and happy, but I didn't realize that it was all an illusion. Since my youth, I have loved Fu Zhizhou, but Fu Zhizhou's eyes were only on Jiang Ruohui. The two of them standing together could be described as a match made in heaven, with both beauty and talent. It's a shame that Fu Zhizhou was a poor boy, while Jiang Ruohui was a wealthy young lady. So they continued to argue and break up. Every time Fu Zhizhou was heartbroken by Jiang Ruohui and spent the night drinking heavily, it was I who was by his side. I made him awake-inducing soup and took care of his emotions until he reconciled with Jiang Ruohui and left me far behind. That way, I was a backup for Fu Zhizhou for 3 years. Finally, Jiang Ruohui went abroad and soon found a new boyfriend. That day, Fu Zhizhou cried like a baby, downing one bottle after another of beer, with red eyes asking me, why did she have to leave? Is it true that I am not worthy of being loved? I hugged him tenderly and said softly, no, you still have me, Song Sinu will always be by Feng Zhizhou's side. That day, Fu Zhizhou held me in his arms for the first time. He kissed me again. Perhaps under the influence of alcohol, he removed my clothes. Until the next morning when I woke up, I found him sitting by the bed smoking. Heart Joy, let's be together from now on, and I will forget Jiang Ruohui. At that moment, I was overcome by a sense of happiness at having fulfilled my long-held wish, and without thinking twice, I agreed. Since then, we have been living the life of every ordinary couple. Dating, engagement, and marriage. Although Fu Zhizhou was not particularly passionate about me, we always treated each other with respect. I thought I had married love, until Jiang Ruohui suddenly added me on WeChat. Her overwhelmingly busy social media posts stung my heart like needles, leaving me feeling as if I had fallen into an icy abyss. There are all sorts of photos of Fu Zhizhou with her. After I was with Fu Zhizhou, their contact never stopped. 3 years ago, Fu Zhizhou suddenly had an urgent matter on their wedding anniversary. In fact, he was rushing to a foreign country to accompany Jiang Ruohui to a concert. A year ago, I couldn't find Fu Zhizhou in the middle of the night when I had a fever. He said his brother had a problem, but in fact, he was busy accompanying Jiang Ruohui on a transnational phone call. Half a year ago, on the day I won a prize at a competition, the host invited my family member, Fu Zhizhou, to speak on stage, but he suddenly disappeared, leaving me embarrassed and alone in front of many audience members. But that day, he was in a hurry to go abroad to comfort Jiang Ruohui, who was in a bad mood. Over the years, Fu Zhizhou has accumulated a thick stack of airline tickets for his travels. It's like a testament to their love. And I finally realized that this marriage was a mistake from the very beginning, as Fu Zhizhou never forgot Jiang Ruohui. Until I had a car accident and miscarried, Fu Zhizhou, however, was busy accompanying Jiang Ruohui to watch the sunrise. I think this shaky marriage should also come to an end. Fu Zhizhou, if you love her so much, I will return her to you forever. I was already weak after the miscarriage, and soon I felt a wave of drowsiness come over me. Half asleep, I heard Fu Zhizhou say, "Sorry, Sinu, I might not be able to come back tonight as there are still some things to be settled at the company." In an instant, I was wide awake. In the past, I would never have doubted that he was busy with work, but it was only when I saw Jiang Ruohui's WeChat circle that I realized how many times he had used work as an excuse to deceive me. This time, it is estimated that it is not an exception either. But my heart was numb, with not a trace of emotion. Okay, go ahead. Fu Zhizhou was taken aback. If it were before, I would definitely pry into the matter for hours, but why am I so easily agreeing today? He suddenly felt a little uneasy, so he soothed me by gently kissing my cheek. I won't be gone for long. I'll be back to be with you soon. I know I've neglected your feelings these days, but Sinew, we have a long way to go. After saying that, he walked out of the room without looking back. I looked at his back and silently repeated to myself, Fu Zhizhou, we won't have a long time to wait. Because we don't have a future. The next day, I woke up to find it was already noon, but I didn't see Fu Zhizhou coming back. At this moment, my phone rang. It was one of Fu Zhizhou's colleagues. Madam, where is Fu brother today? He didn't come to the company today, he said. I paused. He said last night that he went to work overtime. As soon as those words were spoken, there was an instant silence on the other end, followed by a hurried hang-up as if they were trying to cover something up. I silently opened Zhang Ruo's WeChat Moments. Sure enough, what I saw first was the phrase, "My boyfriend is so thoughtful." Last night, I said I was scared to be alone at home, and he came over specifically to sleep with me. The accompanying picture shows Fu Zhou holding a side profile of Zhang Ruo in his arms. He looked at her as if she were a priceless treasure. I took a deep breath and called Fu Zhizhou. The phone rang for a long time before someone answered it. What's wrong, Sinew? Fu Zhizhou's voice was hoarse and he didn't know what he was doing. Are you coming home today? Zhizhou, it's just too sensitive there, no way. Suddenly, I heard a woman's voice that was extremely coy and indirect. I paused, and then a wave of nausea flooded my mind. Fu Zhizhou felt a little flustered as he moved the phone away from him. I'm afraid I'll have to work overtime today, so I won't be coming back. After saying that, he hung up hurriedly. I forced myself to drink several mouthfuls of water, but then I couldn't help going to the bathroom and vomiting for a long time before I could finally suppress the feeling of nausea. After I got married to Fu Zhizhou, he rarely touched me, and I had never seen him in a state of passionate desire. Looking back now, perhaps it was just because the person he was facing was me, not Zhang Ruo. That day, I tortured myself by endlessly scrolling through WeChat Moments. I saw Fu Zhizhou blowing Zhang Ruo's hair, washing her underwear, and cooking lunch, all of which were things that Fu Zhizhou had once found too troublesome to do for me. I saw them go to the amusement park again, and they kissed each other passionately at the top of the Ferris wheel. The legend says that if a couple kisses at the top of the Ferris wheel, they will never be apart. I silently saved these photos and then said to myself in my heart, Fu Zhizhou, good, I also wish you a happy and long-lasting marriage. When Fu Zhizhou finally arrived, he saw a face devoid of expression on me, and most of the dishes on the table had already cooled down. He felt a little guilty, so he deliberately said, "Xinu, didn't I tell you not to wait for me to eat? You're pregnant now, and you can't starve yourself." After saying that, he came to hold me. But I managed to dodge it. Fu Zhizhou, you don't know yet. Our baby is no longer with us. My mood plummeted suddenly, and Fu Zhizhou, seeing me like this, felt a lump in his throat for some reason. Even though I was right there with him, he had a sense of unreachable distance. Hardy, I've been neglecting you these days because of work-related issues. Your birthday is the day after tomorrow, and I swear I'll be there to spend it with you. Will you be okay with that? I forced a smile and said, okay. Fu Zhizhou let out a sigh of relief. I soon stopped thinking about it. On the day of my birthday, he was especially cheerful. Along the way, he kept trying to make small talk with me and cheer me up. He took me to a romantic French restaurant, but just as we had finished ordering our meal, his phone rang again. Seeing the caller ID, he subconsciously furrowed his brow. Then, just a few seconds later, she said to me, I'm going to step out to take a call. I nodded, and a feeling of foreboding had already begun to rise within me. Sure enough, shortly after, Fu Zhizhou returned with a conflicted expression on his face. I'm terribly sorry, but the company has suddenly received a visit from a senior executive. I need to go back and entertain him. Okay. He hadn't finished speaking when I spoke up in response. Fu Zhizhou suddenly froze, with the words he had prepared stuck in his throat before he could say them. Work is important, and you're doing it for our family. I understand. Upon hearing what I said, Fu Zhizhou displayed an especially satisfied expression. He didn't hesitate any longer and couldn't wait to leave. Don't worry, Sinew. I'll make it up to you with a proper birthday celebration next time. There will be no next time, Fu Zhizhou. I sat alone and enjoyed my own birthday dinner, just like the little girl who always celebrated her birthday alone 10 years ago. I have no parents and I am an orphan. The first birthday of my life was spent with Fu Zhou. At the time, he said, "Poor thing, how sad you must be to have to spend your birthday alone. Glad you met me. From now on, you'll never be alone with me by your side." Ever since then, I have been hopelessly in love with Fu Zhizhou. I regard him as my salvation. Unfortunately, the only one who can truly save themselves is themselves. Tears fell onto the cake on the plate, and I took a bite. Sour, salty, not sweet at all. Fu Zhizhou, you're lying to me. I am still alone. Fu Zhizhou felt guilty about what he had done to me, so he sent me many gifts as compensation. But I saw Joanna Wei post another WeChat moment that day. Clearance sale. I have too many gifts from my boyfriend, so I asked him to take some of them and sell them. I'm a great girlfriend who knows how to save money. P.S. Of course, the ones he took were the ones I didn't like. I chuckled to myself. Then he threw them all into the trash can. I suddenly felt like doing something. So after Fu Zhizhou said again that he wanted to go out for dinner, I pressed him to tell me who he was going with. He was initially quite composed, but his face changed when he heard that I was also going. In desperation, he had no choice but to say, if Vivian has returned to China, we, her old friends, would like to hold a welcome banquet for her. It's really just to welcome her, nothing else. Fu Zhizhou was eager to explain something, but I interrupted him, saying, "Of course I know, you and Ruoe are just friends. So, as your wife, I would also like to accompany you to welcome her, wouldn't it be nice?" Fu Zhizhou was momentarily unsure whether what I said was true or not, but he couldn't bring himself to reject my sincere look. Reluctantly, he had to agree to take me along. And when we arrived at our destination, I immediately spotted the vibrant and outgoing Jiang Ruoe. "Zhizhou, you're here." She gave Fu Zhizhou a warm hug enthusiastically, and then, as if she had just noticed me, she awkwardly waved her hand. "Jia, you're here too. I was just so happy a moment ago, you won't mind, right?" I shook my head with a faint smile, saying, "No way." "That's good." I was afraid that my close relationship with Zhizhou would cause you to misunderstand. Jiang Ruoe spoke with a hint of smugness. And when everyone had taken their seats, I realized how much Fu Zhizhou cared about Jiang Ruoe. He knows all her likes, and for every dish he serves her, it's something she loves to eat. Suddenly, someone said sarcastically. Jiang Ruowei, instant white face, eyes with tears, a shaky appearance. I don't do it for the money. She seems to have suffered a great grievance, make Fu Zhizhou distressed very much. That's enough. This party is Jovi's reception, and anyone who talks anymore will get out. The man was silent. But I looked at Fu Zhizhou, hero, save the appearance of beauty, only feel very ironic. Fu Zhizhou has always been gentle and polite, but now he can say dirty words for his white moonlight. He loved her so much. Just then, a waiter came in with a large bunch of red roses. Mr. Fu, here are the 999 red roses you ordered for Miss Jiang. At that moment, the atmosphere became delicate. The first to change his face was Fu Zhizhou. After all, 999 red roses symbolizing strong love, how can people not think too much? He looked at me tentatively, but I didn't respond. Please, don't get me wrong, I just wanted to welcome Ruowei home. I know. There's no need to explain. I smiled generously, but let Fu Zhizhou startled, at a loss. He always thought I was a little too calm. Calm to I don't seem to care. I lightly glanced at the huge bouquet of roses and thought of the bouquet of flowers Fu Zhizhou bought on the roadside a few days ago. One exquisite and noble, the other perfunctory. Just like me and Jiang Ruowei in his heart. I once saw a handwritten letter written by Fu Zhizhou in Jiang Ruowei's circle of friends. In the letter, he said that he was actually glad Jiang Ruowei was not with him. Because he had nothing, can only give Jiang Ruowei hard days. So, what about me? Do I deserve to suffer? I accompanied Fu Zhizhou from scratch, but he didn't even give me a carefully chosen gift. Give me all Jiang Ruowei do not want. Just like in his heart, I can only be Jiang Ruowei's spare tire forever. It's a pastime when she's not around. Just then, the building outside the window suddenly lit up. Huge words appeared on it and kept flashing. But when Fu Zhizhou saw that behind the scenes, his face instantly faded. It says, Fu Zhizhou, Jiang Ruowei, be each other's light. I can explain. Fu Zhizhou grasped my wrist somewhat eagerly. Jiang Ruowei also said, oops, sister heart joy. You must not think too much, I and the island is just a very good friend. But I felt my heart hurt badly, how can not laugh out. They're a light to each other. What does that make me? An annoying obstacle? I thought I had been able to do indifferent, but found that they would still be sad. Fu Zhizhou is not a romantic person, even a little shy. Once when I just wanted him to walk with me holding hands, he would say, too many people are bad influence. But he was willing to Jiang Ruowei, spend a lot of money in the downtown building confessions. In this love story belonging to the two of them, I seem to be the unnecessary third party. Excuse me. I picked up my bag and left, but Fu Zhizhou ran after me quickly. He kept explaining to me that he had no special thoughts about Jiang Ruowei. I know, it doesn't matter. I said quietly. All Fu Zhizhou's excuses are blocked in the mouth. This again, this strange sense of detachment. Fu Zhizhou frowned. Until he got home, he still felt restless in his heart, always felt as if there was something he could not hold on to. So he hugged me from behind and said, Joy, I know I've been a little rough lately, but you have to believe that I love you. Not a day goes by that I don't think about our future life, about our child being born, and what name should we give him. Hearing him talk about children, my heart again hurt. Fu Zhizhou, we lost our baby a long time ago, and you still don't know. If you care about me even half as much as you care about Jiang Ruoe, how can you never notice it? Unconsciously, my tears wet the eyes. Fu Zhizhou suddenly panic. Happy heart, it is my fault, you don't cry. He made it up to me by turning down a job for me and sticking to me all the time. This is something I could never have imagined before. He asked me if there was any place I wanted to go. After a pause, I said, I want to go hiking. You promised to give me a confession. When I got together with Fu Zhizhou, he promised to give me a formal confession. He said he would declare his love to me from the highest place in the city. However, after marriage, he always refused because of his busy work. I know, it's not that he doesn't want to say it, he just doesn't want to say it to anyone except Jiang Ruoe. Now, I'd like to hear that belated confession before I leave. As a round song sinew 20 years old dream. Fu Zhizhou promised, packed up and drove me to the foot of the mountain. But just as we were about to leave, his phone rang. Not long after connecting, he began to hesitate. Quickly, he said, I'm sorry. Not going again, are you? I interrupted him. The expression on his face was calm as water. Fu Zhizhou, forbearance, heart's strange sense of unease, nodded. And then he left me without looking back. Fu Zhizhou, do you really have to go? I stopped him suddenly. Fu Zhizhou paused, but did not stop, as if he could not wait to go to a great love date. Looking at his back, I suddenly feel so boring. Those who made promises have changed their hearts, and only those who easily believe are waiting. I climbed up the mountain alone, let the hot sun hit me, let myself sweat. Until you reach the top of the mountain and look down on the people. I shouted, Song Sinyu, you must love yourself. Love yourself even if no one else loves you. When I got home, Fu Zhizhou still hadn't come back. I used to open the circle of friends and found that Jiang Ruoe was updated as expected. Received the confession of my sweetheart to the sea, romantic until death. Originally, Fu Zhizhou is to accompany Jiang Ruoe to see the sea. He refused to accompany me to climb the mountain, refused to fulfill our 20-year-old promise, but was willing to tell the world that he loved her. I laughed at myself. Perhaps I have been exhausted for days. I am a little exhausted. When I went down the stairs, I accidentally stepped on a foot, and soon, I felt a black eye, and actually rolled down the stairs. My body was thick with pain, and a wisp of blood ran down my forehead. The continent. Perhaps because of years of habit, I subconsciously called my only relative. But when the phone was connected, Fu Zhizhou said, Xinu, I have an important meeting on my side for the time being, what happens later? Then he quickly hung up the phone. But I just clearly saw Jiang Ruoe post moments. Fu was watching a movie with her, she said. I called again, and this time I got cut off. I laughed at myself and hit 120 with my last strength. When I woke up, I was in the hospital in a blue and white striped gown. The doctor said that the fall was a bit serious and that it was best to stay in hospital for observation for 2 days. But when I went to pay, I met Fu Zhizhou and Jiang Ruoe in the hospital. He carefully coaxed Jiang Ruoe, very patient, to feed Jiang Ruoe drink what medicine. Don't be afraid of bitterness, Jovi. You can't get rid of a cold until you take medicine. Turns out, it's a cold. Fu Zhizhou, regardless of I fell down the stairs, but Jiang Ruoe a little cold hard work. I vaguely think of Fu Zhizhou, and I said that he likes strong girls. That's why I try to carry everything on my own. But he so patiently coaxed Jiang Ruowei. In the end, it's just the difference between love and not love. Happy? Fu Zhizhou finally saw me, his hand shook, almost knocked over the medicine bowl. I thought you were in a meeting. I just came from a meeting, and Jovi was ill, and I happened to be taking her to the hospital. Why are you in the hospital? The nurse nearby told him I had fallen down the stairs, and he frowned. Happy heart, are you okay? Did you fall our baby? The nurse wondered, are you the husband of this lady? She's not pregnant. Nothing, the baby is healthy. I interrupted the nurse loudly. Calmly lying. Fu Zhizhou was relieved. He looked at Jiang Ruowei and said, if you have nothing to do, I will send Ruowei back first. After I send her, I will come back to take care of you, okay? I pulled out a laugh. Of course. Fu Zhizhou, you missed your last chance to learn the truth. Fu Zhizhou don't think much, can't wait to help Jiang Ruowei left. And I waited in the ward until the evening, and did not wait for Fu Zhizhou to come back. Habitually open the circle of friends, just know he took Jiang Ruowei to open the race car. They galloped freely in the night wind. Fu Zhizhou's face was full of ease and joy, and he could not see a trace of worry about me. I'm like a numb puppet, my mood does not fluctuate. After paying the fee, he didn't go back to the hospital. Then he threw away all the things related to Fu Zhizhou in the past 10 years, cancelled all the social accounts, and changed the contact information. Finally, I checked the flight time. We'll have already prepared the divorce agreement, Jiang Ruowei's circle of friends backup, Fu Zhizhou saved 7 years of air tickets, all on the coffee table. Left the city. When I had arrived safely in England, Fu Zhizhou finally remembered me. He had been racing all night, and now he was lying in bed, dragging his tired body, and Jiang Ruowei was obediently nestled in his arms. As the adrenaline wore off, it occurred to him that I was still waiting for him. Thinking of my pale face, he said, Ro, I must go to the hospital tonight to see Joy. Jiang Ruowei snorted, said you only belong to me tonight. If you don't really put Song Sinew, give her a call, can't it? Say that, she again in the arms of Fu Zhizhou. Jiao, hand on the sensitive parts of Fu Zhizhou move around. Fu Zhizhou fundus flashed a flicker of desire, and instantly put out the mind to see me. He didn't hesitate. He just called me. But when he called me, he found out that I had blocked him. This has not happened in a decade. In the past, I was gentle and considerate to him, not to mention shielding, that is, a heavy word never said to him. Fu Zhizhou suddenly felt a strong panic. He sent me WeChat again, only to find that WeChat was also blocked by me. And the rest of my social media apps, they just logged out. Now, he can no longer calm down. The panic that has been forced to ignore completely broke out at this moment. He only felt that if he did not do anything, it would really be too late. So he quickly put on his clothes and rushed to the hospital. Fu Zhizhou, you promised to accompany me tonight. Jiang Ruowei Tootmouth wanted to stick up, but was pushed away by Fu Zhizhou. Stop it, there must be something wrong with Joy, otherwise how could she block me? Jiang Ruowei was pushed to the ground and looked at Fu Zhizhou in disbelief. You pushed me, for Song Sinew pushed me? Fu Zhizhou thought that in the past few days I face him and Jiang Ruowei close is always a look of indifference and alienation. The panic in the heart amplified again. He ignored Jiang Ruowei and hurried to the hospital. only to be told by the paramedics that I had already been discharged. He hurried home again, only to find an empty room. Everything about me, it's gone. My figure was ripped from our wedding photo. Most of my full wardrobe was suddenly empty, all the makeup on my dressing table was gone, and even my slippers were missing. Fu Zhizhou lost his mind and muttered, "Sinew, where have you been?" He staggered and slumped on the sofa, finally seeing the papers on the coffee table. In an instant, he turned pale. Trembling, he picked up the photos that recorded him and Jiang Ruowei, and each time he saw one, his face became whiter and whiter. After reading only 5 or 6 of them, he lost the courage to read more. But I printed out hundreds of them. How desperate must I have been? And on top of that, he suddenly saw my miscarriage report. This is... Fu's eyes turned red in an instant, and then he gave a cry of pain. The baby he's been waiting for so long, it's gone. When he saw the date on the report, he froze in place. It was the day he went to watch the sunrise with Jiang Ruowei. He remembers me calling him 1,000,000 times that day. But in order not to let me disturb him and Jiang Ruowei, he turned off his mobile phone directly. It was 3 days before he came back. When I lay alone on the cold operating table, how desperate should I feel? Happy? Sorry? Fu Zhizhou suddenly broke down in tears. At that moment, he realized how ridiculous he had been. Suddenly, he received a timed email on his phone. If you open it, it says, "Fu Zhizhou, when you receive this email, I will already be gone. It is a pity that I could not be your salvation, but become an obstacle between you and Jiang Ruowei. We have been in love for 7 years, but I have loved you for 10 years. I thought you would gradually forget Jiang Ruowei, but I was wrong. I can never compare with her. As long as she calls, no matter what situation I am facing, you will leave me without hesitation. Now, I really give up. I am willing to give you back to her, never appear in your life. No. Please, don't go." Fu Zhizhou felt a dense pain from the heart, which was tantamount to cutting flesh and blood with a knife. When he thought he'd lost me forever, it felt like the sky had fallen. He was so overwhelmed with remorse that he fell to his knees and gouged the ground with his hands. I was wrong, Joy, I know it. Fu Zhizhou don't know how long he cried. Suddenly, his eyes flashed to the sky of anger, angrily rushed to Jiang Ruowei home. Chow, you are back. I knew you would choose me again this time. Jiang Ruowei surprised to Fu Zhizhou's body, but the next second, Fu Zhizhou suddenly pushed her away. And then he slapped her hard. Who told you to add a happy friend? Post those things. Fu Zhizhou shouted to Jiang Ruowei. Jiang Ruowei was stunned and covered her face in disbelief. Then came an even sharper and harsher roar. You hit me? Fu Zhizhou, I have never been dared to hit me in my whole life. You clearly said you love me, absolutely can't lose me, but you actually beat me for some sinew, that bitch. Crack. Another slap. Fu Zhizhou looked livid and said in a cold voice, What do you think you are? I dote on you, just for the sake of my former love. Do you think I will get back together with a woman who abandoned me? Don't think I don't know that you left me because you thought I was poor. Later, you were abandoned by your rich second-generation boyfriend abroad, and your family was broke, and then you came to me. Jiang Ruowei's face turned white and green, and finally turned red. Fu Zhizhou, what good things do you think you are? You took the initiative between us, and now Sam Sinew found you only regret it. Are you worthy? Fu Zhizhou was speechless for a moment. He could not refute Jiang Ruowei because he was indeed sorry to me. He lost me because he deserved it. But he was not willing. Clearly, I used to love him so much. How can you say break up? He must find me, he thought, and get me back. After arriving in the UK, I was a little uncomfortable at first, but within half a month I got used to the life here. There was no one I knew, there was no need to socialize, and I could concentrate on my art. My tutors say that I have a high talent for painting, and my works have won prizes in international competitions. When I was immersed in art, I saw Fu Zhizhou downstairs in my house. It had been 3 months since I had left, and he looked unkempt, and unkempt. I don't know how he found me, but I was silent for a moment and didn't go to see him. But he couldn't wait for me, so he just stood outside the window. The sun rose and the moon set, and he stood for a whole day and night. By the end, my legs were a little shaky. I was afraid of trouble if he died on my doorstep, so I could not bear to go downstairs. Fu Zhizhou, what are you doing here? At the sight of me, Fu Zhizhou's eyes lit up instantly, like a withered rose in the desert that had regained its moisture. He rushed up and hugged me, like he was trying to melt me into his blood. Joy, I've finally found you. I'm sorry, I didn't know how much I was too much after you left, I didn't know how much I loved you. I can't accept losing you, as long as you are not around me, I can't even sleep at night. You promised you wouldn't leave me, can you give me another chance? I won't take care of Jiang Ruowei anymore. I coldly pushed Fu Zhizhou away. There is nothing in my heart but disgust and irony. I don't understand why people always know how to cherish only after losing, and always like to use the pain after losing to prove how deep the love is. I promised not to leave you, but you also promised to forget Jiang Ruowei, but how did you do it? You cheated me again and again for her, and threw my heart under the foot. Did you consider my feelings at that time? The most useless thing in the world is regret, especially a belated regret like yours. After saying that, I went directly upstairs regardless of Fu Zhizhou's pale retention. Then I moved to get rid of him. But he always finds me. He rented a house near my house, and whenever I left the house, he would haunt me and give me this hurt look. I had enough and called the police. After that, although he didn't pester me anymore, I knew he wouldn't give up. 3 years later, on the day I returned home, Fu Zhizhou was waiting for me at the airport early. When I look at him, I see a plague. Joy, you're back at last. Fu Zhizhou wanted to hold my hand, but suddenly a tall figure appeared in front of him, blocking his sight. I looked at him with a smile. Introduce, this is my new boyfriend, Shenhua Yuan. Shenhua Yuan put his arm around my shoulder and rushed. Fu Zhizhou impatiently picked up his eyebrows. You are the ex-husband that Heart Happy said? You. Fu's face suddenly turned white as paper. He stared at Shenhua Yuan and hugged my hand. This is not true, Joy. You deliberately found a man to anger me? You love me so much, how can you like anyone else? In Fu Zhizhou's uneasy sight, I coldly shook my head. Fu Zhizhou, we have been separated for 3 years, what makes you think I can still love you? I need to make it clear that I don't like you anymore, since the day you chose to watch the sunrise with Jiang Ruowei. Or even earlier, when I first discovered that you and Jiang Ruowei were still on the same page. Fu Zhizhou shook his body precariously. He said hoarsely. Can't you really give me another chance? I replied emphatically, no. After saying that, I took Shenhua Yuan to leave. I thought Fu Zhizhou would give up now, too, but he prayed for my forgiveness by playing a loop on the downtown building. XINU, I was wrong, please forgive me. It is twice as big as the original word for Jiangruoe. I don't know how much he spent. For a time, all the people in the city knew that Fu Zhizhou bowed his head for love, and the people who did not know the truth were still discussing asking me to forgive him. Shenhuayuan gas teeth itch, but I pacify him restlessness, give me to deal with it. I went to see Fu Zhizhou. Fu Zhizhou, the reason why you keep pestering me is because you think I still love you? Fu Zhizhou red eyes, voice hoarse said, isn't it? You loved me to love everyone knows, I don't believe that you cannot love love. I chuckled. Then do you know why I fell in love with you? Because I have been alone for a long time, and no one ever said that I would be with me forever, and you were the first to say so I believed it. But in fact, it doesn't have to be you, it can be anyone. In other words, I can love whoever I want to be with, and you have never been the special one. After listening to Fu Zhizhou, the pupils suddenly shrank, like the long-held faith collapsed. I continued, I just have not been loved, so I fell into the prison in the name of love, and made the mistake of putting my heart on you. Fortunately, now I have figured it out, Fu Zhizhou, you can believe that I really do not love you. After saying that, I turned and left regardless of Fu Zhizhou's reaction. Later, I never saw Fu Zhizhou again. Next time I hear from him, it's on the news. He suffered from severe depression, locked himself in his room all day, and when others found him, they found that he had swallowed hundreds of silver needles alive. Netizens were shocked that he was so cruel to himself, and could not help but deeply uncover his past. So the netizens picked up the story between Fu Zhizhou and Jiangruoe, which made them completely become a rat that everyone shouted across the street. Jiangruoe was netted to lose her job, had to hide abroad again to develop. But she couldn't find a job, and no one wanted to be with her, so she was forced to live in contact with beggars. And Fu Zhizhou, although he was lucky to pick up a life, but became a vegetable, can only spend the rest of his life in a hospital bed. As for me, I snuggled in Shenhuayuan's arms, thinking of my next work. I want to thank myself, thank the 26-year-old Song Sinyu, finally broke through the cage in the name of love. The life I really wanted.